The Square Ball Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. The podcast is brought to you by Levi Solicitors, who will do you a 10% discount on your legal fees at levisolicitors.co.uk/the square ball. And as we're coming to the end of September, 15% on conveyancing instructions. That expires at the end of September. So to take advantage of that, move quickly. I'm Dan Moylan. With me is Michael Normanton.
Hello.
So's Moscow White as well. Daniel Chapman.
Hello.
This one, Propaganda, is the podcast where we find out what's been said about Leeds United, both by you and by the opposition fans. Don't forget, we've got the audio version. We've also got the YouTube version, so you can watch our reactions in real time and you can see our silly faces on the screen. First, we will get the Leeds United fan opinion from our TSB Plus subscribers. They sent us their feedback on the Match Ball show in the wake of the West Ham game at the weekend. These are the things that they picked out, the stuff that we should be talking about. And I want to start on, well, this show has basically become attack the presenter whose opinion you disagree with, which I'm all for when it's you two, but when it's me, don't like it.
I'm yet to find anyone who objects to hard kicking, so I'm fine. I think it's you two.
It's because you're a simpleton, Michael. Johnny B wanted to be positive about this, which I think is good to be positive. He says, Dan was way too depressed on the match ball. Yes, it was very disappointing to lose right at the death, and we deserved the point, but the display was the best so far. We're getting there. Listen to Moscow. The only thing is, I mean, don't forget, we recorded that at, 5:30, and I'd witnessed a hammer blow, last-minute defeat, 40 minutes prior to that. I don't know what exactly you expected out of me on the match ball, apart from a bit of sadness.
I was at the same game.
I know you were. And to be fair, my mum did text me afterwards, having watched the live stream of the match ball, and said, "You all right? You seem a little bit down." I was like, yeah, I'm fine. It's just a football.
A result, it does always swing that mood, though, doesn't it? Like, if we can play really badly, but if you score a last-minute winner, you'd be all... Yeah, we'd be coming in and bouncing.
It'd have been great, wouldn't it? Yeah.
But as it was, we did play pretty well overall. And they're a good side as well. It wasn't like... when we had to get a point at Newcastle and we left thinking, but they're terrible, we really should beat them. Right? I think a draw would have been, well, it was what I was hoping for before the game, and we were so close to it.
We were. And a lot of the comments are either on one side of the fence or the other. It's the fear or the positivity. And plenty of people have said there's plenty to be positive about, despite the start to the season. As well as Johnny's comment, there was Aidan, Pete, Jack, Adsham, Andrew, Steve, all saying, look, chin up, it's fine, it'll be fine. They tend to agree with you, Moscow. It's going to be fine, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, it's what you set it against. I don't think we will get relegated. Therefore, everything that happens between now and May is just an experience.
It's not an enjoyable one, though, is it?
Well, I mean, this is it. Like the word optimism keeps getting thrown at me, and I don't think my view on it is optimistic in the slightest, because the way I'm approaching the season is remembering that last season we didn't win in 20 matches. So even if this season is as good as last season was, which everybody loved and enjoyed, we've still got another 14 winless games ahead of us, minimum.
That feels like a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's just they're coming in a bunch, Moscow, and I don't really like it.
But that's in order to have a season as good as last year, which everybody will be happy about. And the indications are that this year is not going to be as good as last year. We might not get up to 9th again. Although, are Brighton going to finish in the top 7, or is that going to return to some kind of normality? Are Brentford going to keep upsetting everybody in the second half of the season? There's lots of things can happen between now and May. But one thing that will happen between now and May is Leeds will lose loads. Like, even if it's comparable to last season, we've got another 12 defeats ahead of us. So I've not got an optimistic outlook. I've got a realistic outlook about how many games we have to not win because of the season that we will have, and even the season that we are excited about having involves getting hammered and beaten all over the place. We're not actually getting hammered. We're getting, losing in small, annoying ways while playing good football, and that's the other side of it. Is I'm trying not to ignore that the games that we're watching, particularly at Elland Road, after nearly 2 years of not being able to go there at all, are really good. And some of that is part of the fearfulness, because you think, well, we can't let teams keep shooting at Meslier. Although actually, I'm happy if they keep shooting at Meslier, because he'll save them all. But if his nose ends up somewhere across the postcode in Hunslet, if Antonio's messing with him again, then I'd rather we weren't shooting at any other of our goalkeepers. But it's fun. I mean, it's exciting. I didn't watch the City-Chelsea game, Manchester City-Chelsea game. I couldn't remember if it was Leicester or Chester that played against them.
That's it. Put your typewriters down. You don't need to write angry letters now.
But listening to people talk about that top of the table clash between two title challengers, what seems to have happened is that Manchester nullified London and stopped them from playing, scored a goal, and then that was basically the match done. Whereas Leeds games, end-to-end, shots at goal, chances, good players playing well, our keeper making brilliant saves, us having chances and missing them frustratingly, and then in the 90th minute, you still don't know who's going to win. And one of the other things that people are talking about is that second half fade, which I'm still confused about, because everybody is saying, and I get it, and they must be right. I'm frequently wrong about these things, so I listen to what people are saying to us about this.
Except us too.
And what everybody's saying about it is that Leeds faded in the second half, and even Bielsa's like, we stopped trying to go for the win, and that cost us. But the goal came. We had 8,
I was going to say, didn't we have everyone up there?
We had 8 players level or ahead of the ball, and we got caught on the break, and we were crossing the ball into the box trying to win. And it wasn't an isolated incident like the 10 minutes before we conceded. We were attacking, maybe not as well as we were in the first half. I think that was the difference. But we were still, even though Rafinha had gone off, we were getting down the right. It was Roberts playing the ball in for Shackleton to drive into the box, and then Click goes over and crosses in, and Rodrigo has a chance. So there was little bits in there, but it never looked to me as if we'd stopped trying or as if we'd stopped going for the win. And I came out of the ground thinking, I almost wish we had shut up shop, that we'd gone, get everybody back, everybody behind the ball, just clear it, keep Antonio out, stop West Ham from coming at us. And then everybody, including Bielsa, is saying, no, we were too defensive. So I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, but he doesn't.
So necessarily I shouldn't be listened to.
What does Bielsa know? That's the question. Actually, your what you described there, Moscow, Daniel Barthorpe has been in touch to put what sounds like a fancy scientific term on this. So Barthorpe, who's exiled in Stoke-on-Trent, says it's called recency bias, and a lot of the worry this season is based on a very small fraction of last season. It's just a small number of games is what he's basically saying. As a fan base, we are acting like we strolled it last season rather than at times being just as worried up until around March and April, which is a fair point. There was a lot of anxiety until we knew we were home and hosed.
Yeah, I think the thing last year was we never had to see ourselves in the bottom 3 or even particularly close to it. This is when someone will say, actually we were 17th once, but we never felt in there, did we? But the truth is that a single win at the moment takes us out of there, and that looks fine, and everyone feels much better about it, because you can go, we're 14th or whatever we'd be instead, which is still a defeat, and some wins or someone else winning away from us being back down there, but we've just not had that yet. And it's only right that people are concerned we've not won a game yet, because although it has been a tough start, there have been winnable games in there, and it's kind of frustrating that we haven't. And it feels like at the end of last season, which is what he's talking about there with what we're comparing it to, we probably would have won at least 1 or 2 of these games. So there's the anxiety there from it. But overall, I was quite encouraged by Saturday. I thought we could have been and should have been 2-0 up and cruising to a winner if Click had put that chance in or squared it to Harrison or whatever he should have done with it. We should have scored at that point. And Rafinha hits the post in the first half as well, which could make it 2. There were chances there for us, and I know they had chances too, but
I think we had better ones
Melier
in the end. A lot of their chances now are defensive threat, and I was thinking what you were saying there about last season, and what the person who wrote in was saying about last season and recency bias. Like, a lot's being made about Melier making the most saves out of any goalkeeper in the Premier League at the moment. It's exactly where we were last year. He was 3rd in the end for saves in the Premier League, although that Leeds, it's the squad stats, so there's that one game that Casilla played. Behind West Brom, Sheffield United, they had the most, and then it was us. 1 save in it between us and Sheffield United. So we're basically where we were last year, where we are reliant on a superstar goalkeeper keeping a lot of these shots out, but also they're not really dangerous shots. They're good shots, but a lot of what West Ham were doing was outside our box, midfielders shooting from distance, and Meslier saving.
That is borne out in the stats, is that as well? It is all long-range shots we're facing, a lot of them. So we seem happy to, when we're doing that man-to-man thing, drop back to the edge of our area. We noticed it a lot on Saturday, actually. Drop back, get the shape, pick out your man, and it's better to field shots from the edge of the area, I guess, than it is to have them in the 6-yard box.
And especially when, given that our defence is Junior Firpo, who's brand new, Liam Cooper, the captain, Charlie Creswell making his debut, and Jamie Shackleton, he's never really had a run at right
Two children back. And two that are awful. They're all finished.
So, but they're doing very well to keep us out to that extent, and you can't really. The goal, the first one, is Firpo's just gone marking on the wrong side of the pitch, and then we don't fill over enough to stop Bowen. And then obviously, of course, it's 2 deflections that send the ball in, because I don't think we're getting much luck either, and that seems like the last defence of a team that's going to get relegated is we just don't get the luck. But
we didn't cover just how badly deflected that goal was, because I mean, you had your little telly, obviously, Moscow, but the plebs.
I didn't even say it. We can ring the bell when other people.
Us two had not seen a replay, but yeah, I mean, that's not going anywhere near the goal, probably, is it? Until it hits, it goes off Coop and then onto Firpo's arse, doesn't it? Basically,
when we lose, I refuse to watch replays. I've not seen it, so I can't give you. No, I will not watch it.
It might make you feel a bit better in a way, because it's a freak. There's no way. It's not a chance created. It's nothing.
And then the other goal is just. It's a good touch by Antonio to get past Shackleton, and the mess up is leaving him 1 versus 1 against the tiniest player that we have, and that was never going to be won by Shackleton. Bless him, he was good apart from that.
Well, people don't come here for reasoned opinions. They come to the internet for anger and stupid opinions that they can get
the rest of the internet
infuriated about. Well, just before we move on to slinging mud at Antonio, because he should have been sent off, I think what it is for me is the resetting of the expectation now, because we finished last season on such a high, and I've realised that this season, as good as it gets, is probably about a mid-table finish, and I think resetting that expectation has been a reality check, and it's just a bit disheartening, isn't it? And I think that's what we found against like Liverpool when we recorded in the wake of that. It's a bit of a miserable place, is the Premier League, compared to being at the top of the Championship and running away with it. I do understand what people mean when they say it's a hateful place. And then, we're recording, having learned this morning about the Super League teams not getting any punishment. That's all been overturned. It's like, well, and they're talking about doing the 39th game overseas again and all that kind of stuff. And you think, well, really, is this what we have to deal with? But then you look at the alternative, and that is just a hateful mess, is the Championship.
And also, we were very close to really enjoying Saturday. Like, it was a really good atmosphere in there. We scored one good goal. We nearly scored some others. And if we'd have come in having won that, we're probably not looking at the negative of going, Premier League's rubbish, isn't it? We're just really happy to have seen an entertaining game that Leeds United have won. And it can be, you can lose games like that in the Championship, and it's worse. It's much worse.
And that sort of reality reset is possibly one of the things that will keep us in this division, rather than do a Sheffield United and submit to this second season syndrome, because all along the club have been saying it's 2 seasons, and they keep talking about the stats for teams that get relegated before 2 seasons.
50-50, isn't it?
Yep, and they've said that's why the imbalance of investment that turned out frustrating this summer, where we spent so much last summer to get a team that's good for the next 2 years, and you can see that now. If Rodrigo plays like this for the rest of the season, then he's done what we wanted, where it's the injury and COVID affected last year, and then he kicks on in a second Bielsa season. But invest for 2 seasons, because that's what we need to do to keep in the league. But don't go crazy about trying to qualify for Europe. It could, and I thought the midfield debate comes down to this sometimes, where we could have spent 30 million on a midfielder that might have fitted the bill.
Rodrigo de Paul, for example.
Yep, and we'd feel really excited about it and think that would be the player that kicks us into the next places, gets us qualifying for Europe. But the where we've ended up is going, well, if we couldn't get one of the midfielders we felt we could afford that we wanted, so we're going with the players that kept us in the division last year, and not losing our heads about spending a lot of money that we may not have if we get relegated. If we get relegated, having not spent £30 million on a midfielder, it's a calculation rather than. And I suppose what I'm responding to here is the people who are describing it as criminal and negligent. And I think it's it's a calculation based more on that survival is the plan rather than going into Europe is the plan. So we've got enough to survive, and we proved that last season. We've just got to get through this season to survive, and then it may be interesting to see which midfielders are available next summer.
I mean, I guess we'll do this on the main weekly show, but the whole midfield debate, as we're terming it there, probably not helped by having a really thin-skinned owner in relation to Adam Forshaw. But we'll.
But there's a lot of thin-skinned fans about that as well, because
I know, but the difference is we don't own the club, and it's it's what it sets off when.
While we're on the midfield as well, actually, a couple of people, Dave and Paul, did both mention Phillips as well, who he was not as good as he normally is. He was not terrible by any stretch, but I think him being a bit below par. He's not. We've got used to him being sort of 8, 9 out of 10 every week, haven't we? And he was probably more like 6 against West Ham.
He did get caught a few times, as Dave points out, actually.
And against Newcastle and against Fulham. That's why I was asking you.
Sell him, you're saying?
Yeah, basically. That's why I was asking you at Newcastle, because it was unusual watching him get tackled in our box and then not turn up on the edge of the penalty area to stop St-Maximin. And then at Fulham, that pass straight out of our penalty area to the feet of one of their players just looked very un-Phillips-like, and that's why it started having that question in my mind. And then conversely, I'm not deliberately trying to be obtuse, but I didn't come out of the game on Saturday thinking he'd been particularly dreadful. I thought it was fine, but a little bit under par. But then Dallas has been a little bit under par. I thought Click was great, and I didn't have a problem with anything Click did during the game.
Ralph,
the shot is obviously a different matter.
Ralph backs up this opinion. He says he's Phil and Moscow's West Stand friend. Ralph, do you know Ralph?
Oh yeah, I know Ralph.
Oh, good bloke.
Ralph's great. Yeah, I love Ralph.
Right. Do you know what he looks like? Can you describe him to us?
Well, if you picture the most Ralph-looking Ralph that has ever been named Ralph.
A picture's forming in my head now.
Well, then you know what he looks like. That's Ralph.
Yeah,
you know Ralph.
Big R-Dog. Yeah.
Ralph.
He says Dan criticised Phillips, but it was Dallas and Click who went missing at the end of the game, and it meant that we had no out ball or pressing.
Ralph frequently wrong. Dallas went quiet, but even then, so just before we conceded, I think it was Ben Rama breaking over halfway, and Phillips, I think it was Dallas went first, couldn't quite catch him, but then Phillips and Click bore down, and it was one of those classic kind of Leeds when they hunt down players with minutes to go events, because it was, okay, if Dallas can't quite get to him, here's 2 more coming in and we'll get the ball off him. So the energy was still there. It just, I don't know if it was necessarily being used in the best way. And it's interesting, Antonio, I don't know if you saw his post-match comments. I think we kind of tune some of this out sometimes because it sounds quite boring, and they always say that and we lost anyway, but it doesn't matter. But his post-match assessment of playing against us was, he said, I've never run a marathon, but that is the closest thing. That's how I see it. It was so hard. They play man versus man, so they keep going and working right to the end. They are tireless. You run until you can't run anymore. So to come away with 3 points is quality. The feeling I have is relief.
The problem is, though, we know they'll lose the next game because that's what everybody does. So they spend all their energy on us, and then they're knackered for the next game, which is bollocks. Stop doing it. Run out of energy against us.
But it's interesting to set that against...
We deserve better. Against
our feeling that, oh, God, all our players were tired by the end. Whereas Michael Antonio, who is, he doesn't look like he lacks fitness to me, feels he couldn't wait for it to be over. He's relieved it finished. That's the nearest thing he's ever run to a marathon, and he'll be happy not to be playing Leeds next week. So it's always... it's not always, but it's sometimes useful to kind of take a step back from our Leeds view of things and see how other people are looking at what we're doing, especially if they're on the pitch trying to run away from Jamie Shackleton.
Just on Clicky, by the way, in the midfielders, Steve and former Leeds United striker Wayne Andrews have been in touch, actually, just pointing out the shooting. The only thing I have seen from that entire game, since the game, is that still of Clicky around the penalty spot where he should have put it in and it got deflected wide. Sad.
Yeah, it was quite annoying. But, I like that we call him Michael Antonio, by the way.
Well, whatever. Mikhail does he prefer?
But you can call it, I think that's his name.
Do you insist on anglicising his name?
I think you should probably call him his actual name.
I'll try to. I mean, I don't mean to be
Michael
rude.
Anthony.
Isn't Mick Anthony the Cambridge sponsors?
If you say so.
Who?
There's a couple of people got in touch to say that Antonio should have been sent off as well, and Do you think he should? I think it was fine.
As I said on the match,
well, it wasn't
ball,
fine because he elbowed him in the face, but I don't think he'd meant to.
Well, whenever you see those, and obviously we were treated to. The funny thing is they don't show controversial replays, but as part of VAR, they then show the incidents after VAR has decided what it's doing, don't they? And they showed an incident that prompted Friend to go and book Antonio, because I'm not yet convinced he would have dealt with that unless there hadn't been that visceral reaction in the ground to the elbow. The one thing I would say is what I said on the match ball is he's got his eyes on the ball at all times. He wasn't looking at Meslier.
It's Mick George.
Mick George, the sponsor.
Yeah, Mick George sponsors Cambridge. And I don't know if it was the replay that
Cambridge
changed,
United?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if it was the replay that changed Kevin Friend's mind, but he also went and had a look at the state of Mellier's face. And that's a little bit concerning, like the Struijk one, because I don't think we should be basing refereeing decisions on outcomes where it's like, oh, you've drawn blood, therefore that's a yellow card. Whereas if he hadn't, and Meslier had basically been fine, but he'd just gone, oh, and stood there, then it's not a yellow card. And then the same with Struijk on Elliott. If he hadn't damaged his ankle so badly, then it's not even a foul, but because he dislocated it, it's a red. But the whole Friend process with that is, one, why didn't he just disallow the goal in the first place, because it was pretty obvious? And then two, after seeing the replay on the screen where he immediately thought, right, that can't happen, that's no goal, why didn't he book him straight away? Because he went over to Antonio, and this was just Friend's way of refereeing the whole game, went over to Antonio, had a chat with, like, so yeah, I'm not going to allow that goal, but you're doing well since you've moved from wing back. How have you started scoring all these goals and having a chat with him in that? I better go and see how the goalkeeper's doing.
I know what it is.
I've got
the answer.
And then came back.
The answer. We needed Jurgen Klopp to come and tell him what to do, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so.
It
did seem like he was waiting for, well, I don't know what he was waiting for, what the final decision was, where he's like, right, no, I am actually going to give a yellow card for this. And then also, in that case, why it wasn't a red card, because I don't think it was necessarily a red card challenge. It could have been, but then I don't know where Friend has necessarily drawn the line where he's making that decision of like, oh, well, there's loads of blood pouring out of his mouth, so that's a yellow card. Whereas if I hadn't gone and looked at that, I wasn't going to give anything. Like, surely if there's blood pouring out of his mouth and it's clear how much force this elbow had, we'll give him a red card because that's a bad injury. It's like the Harvey Elliott one. If he'd only given if it was a sprain, well, that's a yellow. But oh, it looked really bad and we can't show a replay, therefore it's a red. And I don't think you should be refereeing on the outcomes. He barged into his face with an elbow, book him straight away.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing I was going to say on the refereeing stuff. It was Graham and Elliott who picked out Friend and his refereeing techniques. I was joking earlier saying it should have been a red card. I don't actually think it is, not by the standards I grew up with. That's my frame of reference. I think it is probably it's a hard yellow because he has smashed his face in with a leading elbow, but I don't think he intended to do it. But with reference to that, I grew up watching a game where decisions were blown and refereed immediately, like you're saying, and now there seems to have just become this window where you're not quite sure what's going to happen between point A and point B because they've got VAR and he's then got time to go look at the replay. And is he being influenced by the replay and the reaction of the crowd?
Which is maybe fair enough because he's got that as a tool, but then that again comes down to the pacing of the game. Why don't you start trundling over there straight away? Go, right, I didn't see what happened there, but I know there's a little robot on the side of the pitch that I can go and see. But instead he stands there for ages going, I'm going to wait to be told if I need to see that again. Just go over and have a look at the telly if you want to know more about it. And just on the game you grew up with, the game we both grew up with, I mean, that would have been a good goal for Lee Chapman, wouldn't it?
Jack Charlton scored every single goal in his career by doing that.
He's carrying that goalkeeper into the net, isn't he?
Stand on the line and leather him until the ball's in the net. But I felt like it looked like a foul from the cop, which is a long way from there. And it felt like Friend was he just had it in the back of his mind probably. Like, I don't want to blow and disallow this straight away because if there's a goal scored and then it's not a foul, I'll have West Ham on my back. So I guess it's there as a safety net, isn't it, to say, well, we'll have a look at it, obviously. It's just that I think where it's maybe slightly worrying is that the bar for what VAR will look at this season has changed a lot. So maybe a referee will not give a decision thinking VAR will pick up on it. A bit like the Daniel James one at Newcastle. Like if that's given as a penalty, there's no way VAR would say to him, you've made a mistake there, you need to go and look at it. But obviously they didn't judge it to be enough of a mistake to tell him to go and look at it. So it's I guess your referees are maybe not refereeing a game exactly as they see it because they think a safety net is there, but they probably don't quite know where that is positioned at the moment. So it is difficult, and I do have a degree of sympathy for referees because it feels like they're just constantly pissing around with things at the moment. So it can't be easy.
And the final point then, let's finish on a positive note in this section. Cresswell, he was brilliant, and he's going to be brilliant, and he will lead England to World Cup glory. Have I overreached?
And Liam Cooper was good alongside him.
And he will lead him to Scottish World Cup
It's
glory.
going to be England versus Scotland in the final. It's who said this? It's Wayne Andrews again, our former striker. I thought, especially when I watched the game back, Cresswell and Cooper were kind of sharing Antonio, and he's a good striker and he's a handful, and they both did well against him. And I don't know if having Cresswell there kind of brought the best out of Cooper, because he's got like a young player that he needs to keep an eye on, and so he's raising his own game. But given that
he's got a young player he can tell to go and challenge the big man up front for West Ham.
You go and attack him. But given the defence, okay, we conceded 2 in the end, I suppose. But I think that's the other thing to remember about this run of form, is that the injuries we have, they do, in the one sense, highlight our lack of squad depth, and that's been mentioned by several people whose names, as I scroll, I can't find, but they did say this. I'm sorry for not giving you the shout out. But that's kind of a general view, isn't it, that we're seeing? Aiden, there's one, squad depth.
Well,
No options on the bench.
Angus K as well, which alarm bells.
I think you'll see why he's chosen that username in the next part of the podcast in the Heroes and Villains nominations.
But
I don't think it is actually the Angus K we are necessarily thinking of.
But the other side to this is the players who have been injured and missing, Spanish international centre-back, German international centre-back, Bamford, England international, Harrison's had COVID, everything. So Ayling, key player for us for 3 seasons, and is now injured for however long, or at least he missed that game. So it's not like reserves are getting injured. It's the first team core of the squad getting hurt. But then, remember last season, Liverpool, they lost 2 central defenders and shit themselves. And you saw them in January where they're scrabbling around trying to sign that kid from Preston on deadline day because they can't decide, do we buy somebody, do we not, what do we do? And they ended up losing the league, not getting anywhere in the Champions League. Everybody's crying. There's misery on Merseyside. It was a horrendous time for all of them. Leeds, last season, we start with a defensive crisis. We go get Struijk. Not a problem. This season, defensive crisis, we go get Charlie Cresswell. Problem
So
solved.
what we're saying is it's not the Champions League for us this season, but Europa League, and that's fine.
It's going to have to be if we're going to keep hold of Charlie Cresswell, because he can't be playing at this dreadful level for too long, can he? He's better than this.
And that wraps up then part 1 of Propaganda. Hang about then for the video for part 2, where we will find out what was being said by the Cockneys.
The Square Ball Podcast.